The chandeliers sparkled like frozen fireworks above the ballroom of the Rosemont Grand Hotel, where Seattle's wealthiest citizens swirled in glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos. It was the kind of event where reputations were cemented, fortunes were whispered about, and appearances were everything. For most of the attendees, this annual gala hosted by the Pierce Foundation was a chance to rub elbows with the elite and bask in the aura of power. For 27-year-old Emily Carter, however, it was just another exhausting job. Emily worked as a freelance sign language interpreter, often contracted through hospitals, schools, and nonprofits. She had been invited to the gala on standby duty, ready in case any guest required her skills. She wore her only evening dress, a simple navy gown that was elegant enough to blend in, though it didn't have the shimmer of designer labels floating around her. Most people hadn't noticed her, which was both a relief and a quiet humiliation. She wasn't here as a guest. She was here to work. Still, Emily's eyes moved restlessly over the crowd. She had always been good at observing people, at catching nuances others overlooked. That was when she saw her, a girl, no older than 16, standing apart from the bustle near a marble column. She wore a floor-length silver dress that shimmered under the lights. Her dark hair swept into an elegant twist, diamonds glinting at her ears. She was beautiful, undeniably so, but there was something in her stance, rigid, withdrawn, that set her apart. Her gaze flicked between people's lips, watching conversations intently, but never stepping forward to join. Emily's pulse quickened. She recognized the signs instantly. The girl was deaf. No one spoke to her. No one tried. Emily's heart twisted as she noticed the way people drifted by as though the girl were invisible, their laughter flowing around her like water skirting a stone. And then Emily realized who she was looking at. She had seen her face before, in newspapers and magazines. This was Lila Pierce, the daughter of Jackson Pierce, billionaire tech magnate and tonight's guest of honor. As if summoned by the thought, the energy in the ballroom shifted. Photographers surged toward the grand staircase as Jackson Pierce descended, tall and commanding, salt and pepper hair immaculate, his presence drawing everyone like a gravitational pull. The cameras flashed, the applause swelled, and people angled their bodies just so, hoping to be in a picture with him. He was the man of the evening, the titan whose company had reshaped digital communications, the philanthropist funding a new pediatric hospital wing. And yet, as Emily's gaze darted back to Lila, she noticed something heartbreaking. The girl's eyes were locked on her father, pride and longing flickering across her face, but he never once glanced in her direction. For everyone else in the room, she might as well not exist. Emily hesitated. She wasn't supposed to interfere. Her role here was professional, detached. But her chest ached as she watched Lila tuck her hands behind her back, as if restraining herself from reaching out, from breaking the invisible wall around her. Emily knew what isolation looked like. She had seen it in children she worked with, in adults sidelined by misunderstanding. But here it was, wrapped in diamonds and wealth. Taking a breath, Emily crossed the ballroom. Lila's eyes widened slightly when Emily approached, perhaps surprised that someone dared come near. Emily raised her hands and signed a gentle hello. Lila blinked, startled. Then her expression shifted, breaking into a smile that lit her entire face. "I'm Emily," she signed, her hands moving fluidly. "What's your name?" "Lila," the girl signed back eagerly. "You know ASL?" Emily nodded. "I'm an interpreter. Do you mind company?" The silent laugh that spilled from Lila was brighter than any sound could have been. Her hands flew quickly. "Please, I've been stuck here all night pretending I'm not dying of boredom." Emily chuckled, matching her energy. As they exchanged signs, Emily felt a warmth spreading inside her chest. The stiffness in Lila's shoulders eased. Her eyes sparkled with wit, and the guarded composure she had worn melted away. Beneath the glamour was a teenager desperate for connection, for recognition beyond her father's shadow. They keep asking if I can lip read, Lila signed, rolling her eyes. And when I say yes, they exaggerate every word like I'm 5. Emily's lips curved. Or they shout, right? Lila grinned. Exactly, or better, they talk to whoever's with me as if I don't exist. It's exhausting. Emily nodded, her heart aching. You deserve better. For a moment, Lila's gaze softened with something raw. I'm used to it. Being Pierce's daughter means people see the money, not me. Emily wanted to protest, to tell her she mattered more than all the diamonds in that ballroom, but she kept her words measured. Do you have friends at school? Lila hesitated. Not really. The hearing kids think I'm stuck up because of who my dad is. The deaf kids, they think I'm privileged. They don't get that I feel caught in the middle. That sounds lonely, Emily signed honestly. Lila's smile turned wistful. It is. But I have my art. I paint. That's where I'm free. Emily's heart swelled. Here was a girl brimming with talent and emotion, suffocating under the weight of her father's empire. She wanted to ask more, but her thoughts were interrupted as Jackson Pierce himself drew closer, cameras flashing in his wake. Lila stiffened instantly, her expression falling into a mask of cool indifference. Emily realized with a pang that this was her armor, the practiced look she wore whenever he appeared. Lila, Jackson said, his voice carrying even without volume. It's time for photos. He didn't sign. He didn't even glance at Emily. Lila's lips pressed into a thin line, but she obeyed, stepping to his side. For the cameras, she smiled. The kind of polished, empty smile that looked perfect in print but hollow up close. Emily's hands curled into fists at her side. She had seen countless forms of neglect in her line of work, but this was its own quiet cruelty. The richest man in the room, and yet he hadn't invested even the smallest effort to speak to his daughter in her language. When the formalities ended, Emily noticed Lila slipping toward a side door, her silver dress catching the light like moonlight. Without thinking, Emily followed. Outside, the night air was cool, scented with roses from the terrace garden. Lila leaned against the stone railing, gazing at the city skyline as if searching for escape. Needed some air? Emily signed softly. Lila exhaled in relief. Yes. Too many lips moving, too much noise. Before Emily could respond, the terrace door opened again. Jackson Pierce stepped out, his expression one of mild annoyance, until his eyes landed on his daughter's companion. Lila, he said firmly, it's time to leave. Emily turned toward him, her pulse hammering. Here was the man who held the city in the palm of his hand, and yet he didn't even attempt to reach his daughter where she was. Mr. Pierce, Emily said aloud, while her hands moved in tandem for Lila's benefit. I'm Emily Carter, an interpreter. I've been speaking with your daughter. She's remarkable. For the first time, Jackson's composure faltered. He blinked at Emily, as though unused to being addressed so directly by someone outside his circle. Thank you, he said curtly. But my relationship with my daughter is a private matter. Emily's jaw tightened, but her hands kept signing so Lila caught every word. With respect, sir, communication should never be private. It should be shared. A flicker crossed Jackson's features. Shame, anger, something unspoken. Lila's eyes were wide, her hands frozen mid-air. And in that suspended moment, Emily realized this was not just another job. It was the beginning of something much greater, something that could change all their lives forever. The silence on the terrace stretched thin, fragile as glass. Emily could feel the tension coiling between father and daughter. The billionaire in his immaculate suit, powerful enough to sway markets, and the girl in her silver dress, powerful only in the fragile strength of her smile. Jackson's expression was unreadable, but his voice was clipped. Lila, let's go. We've stayed long enough. Beside Emily, Lila straightened, her mask sliding back into place. She didn't sign, didn't speak, only moved toward the door with the practiced obedience of someone used to being dismissed. Something inside Emily flared hot. She couldn't let this moment dissolve into yet another evening of silence. "Mr. Pierce," she said quickly, signing as she spoke, "your daughter deserves more than being a shadow in your world. She deserves your words, your time, your presence." Jackson's jaw tightened. His gaze cut to Emily, sharp as glass. "You presume much for someone who knows nothing of my family." But Emily refused to look away. "I know enough," she answered. "I know she waits for you to look at her, to see her, and every time you don't, it leaves another scar you'll never see." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Pain, guilt, buried so deep it barely surfaced before being smothered. He turned to Lila. "Wait for me in the car," he instructed. Lila hesitated, her eyes darting between them. Her hands twitched as though she wanted to sign something, to demand to stay. But in the end, she only nodded and slipped inside, her shoulders tense. Now it was just Emily and the billionaire. Jackson exhaled slowly, as if shedding the weight of the cameras and adoration he had carried all night. "You think I don't love my daughter?" His voice was low, almost dangerous. Emily's heart hammered, but she held steady. "I think you don't know how to show it in the way she needs. Love without language feels like absence. She's starving for you, and you're too busy building empires to notice." The words hung in the air, daring, irreverent. She half expected him to walk away, to have her escorted from the premises. Instead, Jackson leaned against the balustrade, staring out over the city lights. For the first time, he didn't look like a man untouchable. He looked tired. "When her mother died," he said quietly, "I promised I'd give Lila everything. The best doctors, the best schools, every advantage money could buy. I thought that was enough. I thought," his voice faltered, "I thought if I fixed her deafness, she wouldn't suffer. But she didn't want to be fixed. And I didn't know how to meet her where she was." Emily swallowed hard, her anger softening. She never needed fixing. She just needed you. Jackson's eyes closed briefly, as though the words struck a place he had kept locked. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple," Emily said, signing each word with deliberate clarity. "Not easy, but simple. Learn her language. Step into her world instead of dragging her into yours." The night stretched around them, filled with the muted hum of the city. For the first time in years, perhaps, Jackson didn't have an answer. Over the weeks that followed, Emily didn't expect to hear from them again. She returned to her regular interpreting jobs, carrying the memory of Lila's smile in the corner of her heart. But then one morning her phone rang. "Miss Carter?" a smooth female voice asked. "This is Marianne, Mr. Pierce's assistant. He has requested your services as a private tutor. For sign language." Emily nearly dropped the phone. She agreed before she could overthink it. The first lesson was awkward. Jackson sat stiffly in his penthouse library, his hands clumsy as Emily guided him through the alphabet. Lila sat on the couch, arms crossed, clearly skeptical. She had seen promises before, seen attempts that fizzled out. Emily noticed the way her eyes darted, testing her father, waiting for the inevitable failure. But Jackson kept trying. His fingers stumbled, his brows furrowed, but he repeated each sign until it stuck. Slowly, week by week, the barrier began to crack. One evening, months later, Emily watched as Lila signed a joke, something quick and sharp about his terrible attempt at cooking dinner. Jackson didn't need Emily to interpret. He caught it himself, and to Lila's astonishment, he laughed. A real, unguarded laugh. The look on her face in that moment was something Emily would never forget. Shock, then delight, then a rush of tears she tried to hide. Spring arrived, and with it, the Pierce Foundation's annual art showcase for young talents. Emily was there on assignment again, but this time she wasn't just an interpreter in the background. She was a witness. Because this year, one of the featured artists was Lila Pierce. Her paintings lined the gallery walls, vivid explosions of color, abstract yet raw, capturing emotions words couldn't hold. There were canvases that pulsed with loneliness, with yearning, with defiance. And there was one painting in particular, a girl on a terrace, city lights sprawling beneath her, while a figure loomed in the doorway behind her, shadowed but reaching. The title, The Silence Between Us. Guests murmured, impressed. Critics took notes, but Emily's eyes were on Jackson. He stood in front of that painting for a long time, his shoulders tight, his jaw working. Then, with a shaky breath, he signed 3 words to his daughter. "I'm so sorry." It wasn't perfect. His fingers faltered, his rhythm awkward. But Lila understood. She froze, her eyes wide, and then tears spilled freely down her cheeks. She stepped forward, her arms wrapping around her father in a fierce embrace. The cameras caught it, of course. The story made headlines the next day. Billionaire breaks his silence. Father and deaf daughter reunite through art. But for those who were there, it wasn't about publicity. It was about a man finally breaking the wall between himself and the only person who truly mattered. For Emily, life moved on. She continued her work, interpreting for families, hospitals, schools, but every so often her phone would buzz with a message from Lila. Photos of new paintings, updates about school, snippets of life, and sometimes a video clip of her father signing clumsily but earnestly beside her. One afternoon, Emily received a message that made her laugh through her tears. It was a short video. Lila, grinning mischievously, signing, "He's still terrible at fingerspelling, but he's trying." And that's everything. Emily closed her phone and smiled. That was the truth of it. Love didn't need to be perfect or polished or powerful. It just needed to speak, in whatever language it could. And for the billionaire's lonely daughter, silence was no longer her cage. It was the canvas where love finally found its voice.